hi everyone, my name is Angie Viscianen and I am the founder of Leg Up Legal. We provide a mentoring program that connects pre-law students to lawyers so that they can learn more about the legal profession before they decide if it's right for them. And we've been doing these Zoom meetups where I bring in lawyers and law school admissions consultants and all sorts of folks to talk to you guys about things that will help you in your legal career. So I'm excited today to introduce to you Shelly Joyner, and she is an estate planning and probate lawyer. And she's going to tell you a little bit about her career path and how she found her way into that practice area. So Shelly, I'll let you take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Looks like we're all at least Central Time Zone. So my name's Shelly Joyner. You might have already kind of heard me discussing. I know that this is a really good camera, but you might notice that I'm not 25 years old. I was a non-traditional law student. I started law school when I was 33. So my story is that I worked for FedEx Express for 17 years. At 18, I started working for them, started as a package handler, ended up being an account operations manager. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Castaway, but Tom Hanks with stealing bikes and, things literally on fire. I got to do that for a living for a while, minus the 3-year beach vacation. So basically, FedEx paid for my undergrad. So I kind of had to do it slowly. It took me 15 years to finish my undergrad. I actually graduated from an aviation school when I was about 32. And basically at the end of my undergrad, I got to where my classes were just, you can take whatever electives. And I found myself taking a lot of political science and constitutional history, constitutional theory classes. And so, here I am, at FedEx, and I found myself studying law for fun, said nobody ever. And that's how I relaxed. So about the time I was finishing up my undergrad was also kind of the time I was realizing how miserable I was in my other career. Before I was 30, I'd had 2 trips to the emergency room for chest pains. It was just not a great environment for me to be in. I'd always been interested in the law, but I had this, what I now know is a very incorrect perception that the legal field is only for the elite, that you only get into law school if daddy went there. And I just never thought that that was an option for me. So when my boss told me point blank that he was not going to promote me because I was female, I said, okay, this is my snapping point. So I decided that I would make the investment in myself. And I chose to use all of my retirement savings from FedEx to go to law school. So sure enough, I did. I was in Memphis with FedEx, and I kind of told everybody, I'm going to Texas, and moved back here and applied to UNT Law. So came back here, got accepted. And one thing I want to mention too, I know that it looks like you guys are all in various processes of where you are aiming at law school. One of the things that I was correct about, in that law is only for the elite, the financial commitment to even just apply, I probably spent a little over $1,000 just applying to law school. So between the registration fees for the LSAT, I couldn't afford an LSAT tutor, but just, buying the books and stuff. So, I probably burned $1,000 before I even got accepted into law school. So the fact that some people don't even have the ability to invest that much is where the inequality, I think, starts. But, like I said, I decided to burn through my retirement because that was kind of my choice. So anyway, get into law school. So just, I don't think we have everybody's cameras on, but, humor me even though I can't see you. Raise your hand if the last class or meeting you were in, you were the smartest person in the room. Okay. So like when I started law school, I think, pretty much all of us could have raised our hands. And, I don't know who said it, when, why, but, somebody's quoted as saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. So it was really cool and also daunting to finally be in a room with people who were at least as smart as me, if not smarter. And that's kind of where, I don't know if it gets talked about enough, how you kind of have to re-gauge your expectations in law school. They told us time and time again, if in undergrad you are able to get A's, or, bless your heart, if you're able to easily get A's, you need to accept the fact that you're going to have to fight for a B in some classes in law school. And, that kind of mental gymnastics you have to do to be able to understand how much different law school is. No matter how good you are at studying in undergrad, you're going to have to learn how to study differently for law school. If you were the, assertive person that could always get up and, be the class leader in class, well, now you're in a room full of those people. So you have to learn how to gracefully either fight for dominance or just give up on it. So anyway, that was something that I don't know if people talk about enough, but I have to re-gauge your expectations and your pecking order when you're in law school, because all of a sudden you're with a whole lot of people who are a lot like you in a lot of ways. So anyway, when I started law school, coming off of FedEx, I thought that I wanted to do employment law. I kind of saw the best and worst of employer-employee interactions when I was at FedEx. So I thought that was what I wanted to do. Got to law school, took a few employment law classes, took a few civil rights classes. And long story short, it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So I kind of started hunting around.
Shelly, can you tell me a little bit about why you chose UNTD particularly? Because I know back when you applied, it was still in its provisional license, right? So, or provisional accreditation, sorry.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Okay. So actually, it wasn't even provisional. We didn't even have that when I chose to go to school there. We got provisional my second year. I chose UNT because they made it clear that they respected, appreciated, and wanted folks that maybe did or did not have good scores, maybe did or did not have a good GPA, but they had a good resume. So I appreciated the fact that they appreciated me. They were ready to take into account my life experiences, my work experience, and how that was going to translate into success as an attorney, which I absolutely believe that it did. Having a substantive career, having just years under my belt as an adult, made, I think, law school a lot easier in that, in two main things. One, I knew how to time manage. I mean, that was that was my job at FedEx. But again, too, as an adult, I mean, I never ever had to pull an all-nighter for law school. I never finished a project the day before it was due. I mean, my stuff was done well in advance. And the other thing is too, I just learned how not to freak out. There were a handful of I don't want to say traditional student, that's ridiculous. There were a handful of people in my class, maybe 10 out of 80, that went straight high school, undergrad, law school. And I just, every single one of them would just get just really stressed out over stuff. And I guess I was kind of, I don't know, desensitized, had learned how to deal with it. I don't know, but I had a blast in law school.
Yeah, I think for people who go to law school at a later stage, you just know more about yourself. I think one of the things that is really harrowing about law school is it kind of test your boundaries on, do you really know yourself? Do you know how you study? Do you know how you learn? Do you know how you time manage? Do you know do you know what you really want out of your career? It pushes you to think about all of that on a very accelerated path. So if you haven't taken the time to form the core of who your person is and throw yourself into law school, you can feel really disoriented really quickly. And so I think for people who go, at a later stage, you know enough about yourself to say, you know what, that's just not me. That's not what I do, and I'm okay with that. But if you haven't taken the time to get to know yourself, you see all these other people doing other things and you think, oh, should I be doing that? Should I be doing that? Should I be wanting that? Should I be wanting that career? And you're just getting pulled in all these directions. So it's very jarring.
And I don't want to make too many assumptions. I mean, if you're 22, don't think that I'm saying you're gonna freak out. I don't know what your life experiences are. I don't know what kind of stress you've had to deal with in your life. I don't know what kind of situations, whatever. It just from the folks that I knew in our class, there were more people who were older, who were able to hold it together a little bit better, and as opposed to most of the folks who were younger. But I have an exception though. There's a man in my class. He was retired naval intelligence. Spoke 8 languages, had lived all over the world. And I remember first semester, first week of finals, the first time any of us took a law school final, I ran into him in the elevator and he's just sheet white and his eyes are this big.
Oh, goodness.
Larry, how's it going, man? I said, man, I'd rather be in a firefight right now. At least in a firefight, eventually they have to stop shooting. I'm like, man, Larry, get it together. You just have to read some stuff and take some tests. It's going to be okay. So that's my exception of what I just said. Just because you're older doesn't mean you're going to hold it together. He was losing it. Anyway, my buddy Larry, he's doing all right now. Anyway, so yeah, definitely have to know yourself. And speaking of which too, I think that a lot of times people who start law school later know what they don't want. And that made a lot of people more confident about locking down and really choosing law as a career. There was one younger person in our class. Her parents were both lawyers. And I, just kind of I'm supposed to go to law school, so I'm not. So I'm going to go. Halfway through first semester of our second year, she just one day came and said, this is not what I want. I am leaving. And she did. Dropped out that day. And good for her for figuring it out then, and not 5 years into practice when she had a bottle a day habit and was, then deciding she had regrets.
Totally. I think if you get into law school and you find out this is not for you, there is no need to just continue the trudge for no reason. Just, don't be afraid. I know you feel like you're pot committed because you've already paid, tens of thousands of dollars. But you know what? If you keep going, you're going to be paying even more money. So, why pay even more money to have a career you don't want, right?
Yeah, because it sounds like, such a snotty thing to, law school is not for everybody. But it's not, though, for a variety of reasons. Med school is not for me. I never would have made it through med school. Law school was great for me because that's just how I'm wired. One of the main things, by the way, one thing that made law school much easier for me, I happen to be a speed reader. I read at about triple the rate of an average adult, and about double the rate of a college educated adult. So that made things a lot easier because, all lawyering is reading a ton of stuff that nobody else wants to read and then responding by writing even more stuff that nobody else wants to read. And we just volley back and forth until somebody gives up. It's not the fun Perry Mason or whatever. It's just reading a ton of stuff that nobody else wants to. So that was helpful. So again, if you just are not a person that can or wants to buckle down and read piles of asinine stuff, then law school might not be for you. And that is fine. That is not an indication of intelligence. It's just your vibe, man.
Yeah, one of my partners used to always joke, whenever I would be writing a brief or something, he's like, Angie, in the grand scheme of things, there's only about 5 people who care about what you're writing in the world. There's me, there's our client, there's probably the judge, and maybe an opposing counsel, and that's about it. Nobody else wants to read this crap, so but the people who care about it really, really care.
There's still 2 people in that group of people you just talked about who are supposed to care but don't. And they're just going to kind of take your word for it. So
totally. Yeah. So you went into law school thinking you knew what you wanted to do. So you thought you wanted to do employment law or civil rights law or something. And then you get into law school and you find out, holy crap, that's not what I want to do. So then what?
Yeah. So turns out most employment laws are for the employer, not the employee. We're going to let all of that go right now. So anyway, next thing you know, I'm trying to figure it out. And I took the wills and trusts class. In law school. I had a great professor that was decades of experience, explained everything really well. I never thought I would be interested, but I was, because the thing about just estate planning law, it's hundreds of years old. The skeleton of our laws regarding wills are 16th century English laws that we brought over and have tweaked this much. I actually have a copy of my 16th great-grandfather's will in Essex, England. And if I really had to, I could still take that will and probate it in a Texas court. That's how similar things still are. So as a, like I said, I used to study law while I was working for FedEx for fun. In the history of law, and I really loved it from a scholastic standpoint and from a mechanics standpoint. I love the mechanics of law and how it works. So I like it that the skeleton of estate planning law is this, old developed thing that I get to use my creativity to kind of work within that framework and use the little details of my experience and of Texas law to get things done that way. So while I was in class, I was like, okay, this sounds like a really good foundation of law where I can still be creative. Because the thing is, estate planning law is by definition people's drama, kind of. You've got families, stories, and who likes who and who hates who and what kind of stuff they've got and whatever. So everybody that comes in, it's a different story. And so when I was studying estate planning law in law school, I was like, this actually is kind of interesting. It's not just, drive through like, I want my kids to have my stuff. There's so much more to that. So what I did was, after I took that class, I was it was in between my second and third year law school. I had been working as a clerk at a personal injury firm. Cross that off the list of things I want to do. And what I did is I went on Indeed and I looked for every estate planning law firm in my zip code that was hiring from anything from a legal secretary to a first-year associate. And I started applying because, going into my 3L year, I already had my student bar card. I just kind of figured I would inform them, hey, you can hire me instead of a first-year associate. You can pay me less and, let me work into the job and you can kind of try me out. Or, legal secretary, I could just say, hey, you're getting a really good legal secretary. So that's what happened. My current job hired me as a legal secretary. I went in and interviewed. I don't know where you lost me.
Just where you got hired as a legal secretary.
Right. My managing partner and I just clicked. And I say that to say that just remember that as you're doing your resume, as you're applying for things, it's there only to a certain extent do the numbers matter, do saying all the right things matter. let's say, for example, you're really active, maybe politically. Let's say, for example, you actually, this isn't even okay. Let's say you're a member of the Federalist Society at your law school. Okay, kind of a conservative legal whatever. Put that on your resume. If you're a member of American Constitutional Society on the other side, put that on your resume. Will that keep you from getting certain jobs? Maybe. Will it keep you from getting the job that you wouldn't want to have taken anyway? Yeah. So that's kind of that's why I'm saying my boss is he's kind of nerdy, he's not real outgoing, he's really detail oriented, and I'm the exact opposite. I have a really big personality. I will talk the paint off the wall. I can do 45 things at once. And he recognized in me that I was sort of, a compliment to him. And so I've been working there for 3 years now. He did hire me as a 3L. I was basically working as a first year associate, my 3L year. I won a district court case my third year of law school. I mean, I was knocking it out. Actually, my first day as a 3L, that morning, I had my first prove up hearing in court. It went really badly. And if we get time, I absolutely want to tell you about my first day in court. It couldn't have been much worse. So worked there all 3L year. He actually, he was ready to invest in me after I'd proven myself. He paid me to be off work to take the bar exam. And so I was on leave for 10 weeks while my full-time job was studying for the bar. I did pass, and I'm still there. I am an unofficial equity partner. I am getting profit sharing and still doing the same thing in my little boutique firm doing estate planning. So what we do, we write trusts and wills for people. So folks that want to get their affairs in order, we do that. I also do probate, which means that I do actually go to court, do prove up hearings, sometimes do will contests in court. We also do guardianships. I don't know, another raise your hand. I don't know who's seen the Britney Spears stuff going on. So it's a conservatorship in California. It's called a guardianship here in Texas. Whenever folks can't take care of themselves, either because of dementia, mental illness, or intellectual disability, there's guardianship. So we do that. Since COVID, we've been a bit slow, so I've been doing just about any civil case that comes across my desk. I've done some employment law, sued somebody for a violation of the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act, which has been kind of an interesting little silver lining in all of this stuff. COVID hit about 6 months after I'd taken the bar, so I still remembered a little bit about everything. So I was able to take a lot more cases than we had been doing because I kind of remembered everything still. While my boss only knew estate planning for the last 10 years, I was prepared to do other stuff.
Awesome. So yeah, well, I think we still are pretty good on time. So yes, please tell us about your first day in court.
Okay. So prove up hearings, like I said, remember again that, the laws regarding wills in this country are hundreds of years old. So just think about how this would have gone down in, 15th century England. Somebody writes something down and says, I want these people to get my stuff. So, back then, before we had photo IDs and whatever else, you had to take that will to court to prove. I know you guys are super geared up to learn some Latin. So probate is actually the Latin word for to prove. So even the best written will by the best lawyer, all the notaries and witnesses still has to be proven in court. So for a probate prove-up hearing, you just have different levels depending on how it was written of having to prove that that is really the will. So at the very least, you have the executor of the will, the person that the decedent has decided is going to be in charge. That person has to go in front of a judge and say, yes, this was really that person's will. Yes, I'm qualified to be the executor. And yes, I promise I'm going to follow all the instructions. Usually pretty uneventful. Judge says, okay, great, get out of here. And we all go on our merry way and do what the decedent asked. So again, my first day of my 3L year, and my boss had a prove up hearing. So he takes me with him. I've got my brand new shiny laminated temporary bar card, and here we go off to the courthouse. So this was a case that I had not been involved in at all. And we get to the courthouse, and my boss hands me like this kind of script that he uses to ask the witness questions and says, hey, do you want to do it? And you know me, I'm not scared of anything. Sure. I roll up in there like I own the place. The executor of her grandfather's estate was this little tiny, bless her heart, she wore bedazzled jeans to the hearing, little like 20-year-old woman. And so here we go. I take her up in front of the bench. I'm standing there. I've got my script. I'm ready to go. I'm not going to blow this. I'm a pro. I'm not scared of anything. I'm asking her all the questions. You know, was this your grandfather's will? Yes. To your knowledge, did he revoke the will? No. What? So then I say at the end, are you qualified to serve as executor? And she said, yes. Okay. The judge says, no, counselor, I need you to ask her the qualifying questions. Well, it wasn't on my script, but I'm smart. I got a B+ in wills. I know what the qualifying questions are. So here I go. Are you at least 18? Yes. Do you live in the state of Texas? Yes. Are you a felon? Yes. I go completely white. Anything that wasn't painted on my face is gone. She starts breaking down, screaming, sobbing. The judge leans over the bench and says, counselor, would you like to take your client in the hall? I said, yes, Your Honor, thank you. And we left. So, valuable lesson was learned that day. Make sure you know for sure whether or not your client is a felon before you go in front of the court for a live hearing. So it was, 99% not my fault. My boss had done everything. He kind of forgot to ask her that before we got there. The 1% of my fault was, hey, it was me in front of the judge. I should have covered my own tail instead of just trusting it. But it's been all uphill from there until we got to Zoom hearings, and then things started going wrong for other reasons.
I know one of my law school professors used to always say, he's like, never, ever ask a question you don't know the answer to. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Because nothing good can come of it.
In law school. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's fine. It was narrator. It was not fine.
Little did she know, her client was about to say, I am a felon.
So we had to go back to court for that case with another executor.
Oh, goodness. Wow, that's amazing. So tell me a little bit about, okay, so when you're working with, do you mostly work with individual clients? Do you work with families? Like, what is your interaction?
It depends. So I would say that 80% of the time it's couples who are, all getting their affairs in order. I don't know. Okay, so I didn't know this until not even just law school, but until I started my job. I thought that trusts were for rich people who park their boats inside their yachts off of their private islands. But it turns out the law has kind of developed, again, within those confines of the, 1,000-year-old English law. Revocable living trusts are a thing that regular folks have now. where it's almost like you're writing a contract with yourself to kind of create this little entity where you put everything you have into this trust that everything you have is still connected to your social security number. So you're not changing your tax status for better or worse. So you put everything you have in this trust, almost like putting it in a safe. And then basically you just give the combination to the safe to your successor trustees, and they just get to take over. As opposed to a traditional will, like I was just talking about, because probate means to prove, you have to take a traditional will to court to prove that everything is good, that that person really wrote it, that your executor is not a felon. So you get to bypass all that. So regular folks now are using the skeleton of traditional will law and kind of combined it with contract law. And now we have these living trusts, which is good for public policy because most of the time, my prove up hearings are gloriously boring. It takes longer to find parking at the courthouse than for me to, it's usually the person's widow or widower. And it's like, yep, everything goes to me. I promise I'm going to give everything to myself and okay, see you later. Like that's basically what it is, but that's the law. So it's good public policy to allow people to be able to write those trusts. If you have somebody that you trust enough to say they're going to handle everything after I die, great. We do not need the courts to be involved with it most of the time. So it's really good public policy. And I'm glad that the law has evolved that way so that the government can stay out of folks' business when there's absolutely no need for them to be in people's business.
That's awesome. What are some things that law students can do to find out more about this particular practice area while they're in law school?
I know that my law school, I think that others can too, will help you if you need help, or you can just be like me and just Google all of the firms that you're interested in. There's not going to be a whole lot of firms that will just say, no, I don't want free help. Get a 6-week internship and just go feel it out. I mean, that's how I found out I didn't want to do personal injury. Is I worked in a personal injury firm for a few months. Also, too, like, for example, my firm does webinars for regular folks to say, hey, this is what you need to do for your estate planning. You could just watch any webinar or presentation from certain kinds of attorneys to see what they do. And then, maybe be able to follow up with them and say, is this what your job really is or is not like? So the thing about estate planning, it's not really the kind of, it doesn't seem too sexy, right? It's not, but sometimes in a good way. Like when I tell people all the time, like when I'm catching up with former classmates and stuff, I'm one of the only estate planners from my entire school that I know of, which is great for referrals. But I tell people all the time that it's interesting when it needs to be. People come into my office all the time with all kinds of family drama. Y'all don't even know. I had to probate a will that got rid of somebody's porn collection. So that was one of the more interesting days. But sometimes it is very pleasantly boring. Sometimes all it is the widow saying, okay, my husband gave me everything. Can I go now? Sometimes it's just a couple coming in saying, just split everything between my 2 kids. Sometimes it's that. I think in 3 years, I've had to take my laptop home, like maybe 3 or 4 times to do work outside of 9 to 5. You see, movies and horror stories and stuff about, we've got a discovery deadline, and they send all the poor first year associates with bankers' boxes full of documents they have to highlight. That is not my world. So it doesn't seem like it's that, real battle ready type of law that a lot of other ones are, for good and bad reasons. if you need that excitement, if you need to be the showboating Perry Mason, estate planning is not for you. The other thing too, personal injury. You work at a firm like that, yeah, you're going to get a $5 million settlement, and then it might be crickets for a few more months. That's kind of nerve wracking. But I don't make a lot of money, but it's steady. So that's another thing too. Actually, this year's been really rough. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I made more money as a courier delivering boxes for FedEx than I did this past year. It's reality, especially right now. So please, 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 please don't go into law school assuming you're going to walk into six figures, because statistically, that's not going to happen, especially not right now.
Yeah, I always so now releases this survey of first year salaries, every single year, right? And I always show these pre-law students like, hey, this is what most lawyers make. Like, you hear these stories about people making, 190 right out of law school. That's like a tiny, tiny fraction of people. Everyone else is making somewhere between 70,000 and 90,000, like around there. So
six figures. Ask them how okay they are.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I know with, in law school, one of the weird dichotomies they always draw is like, do you like litigation or do you like transactional work? And I mean, you mentioned that you're in court, but it's not really adversarial most of the time, right? So, so tell me, are you mostly in court, or are you mostly doing transactional work, or what's your mix?
So I'm mostly not in court. I don't even consider myself transactional because so much of my job is interacting with clients. That's another thing too, depending on what kind of law you're in. If, I've got a friend, bless his heart, one of my friends that I went to law school with, he actually lives in my building now. He's one of the most awkward human beings on earth. So awkward, no social skills.
You'll find that a lot in law school, surprisingly.
He is a true transactional attorney. He never talks to clients, thank God. He does insurance defense work, and he just does support for prepping for litigation. Luckily for me, because I would go completely insane as a purely transactional attorney, I have so much interaction with clients. They come in, they say, Shelly, I need to get my affairs in order. They tell me their story. Sometimes it's pleasantly boring. Sometimes it's absolute insanity. Generations of drama, and I got to sort it out. So I'm sitting there with them, and as they're telling me their story, I'm processing how to spit it back out into an estate plan that'll kind of sort some of that stuff out. So once they tell me what they want, then I'm creating their trust for them. Then once it's done, I send them the drafts. Sometimes they see 30 pages of legalese and they say, okay, whatever you say, I'll sign it. And some people want to know about every single thing. When you guys get to the rule against perpetuities for both the bar and your class, I am very good at explaining the rule against perpetuities because I have to do it pretty much every single day to my clients. So anyway, send them that, we go back and forth. What does this mean? Can I change this? Whatever. Then they come back in and we have this big dramatic signing meeting where I explain everything again, answer their questions, tell them how to get all their assets in the trust. I also do the seminars where I'm explaining to people in an hour and a half, everything I learned in law school. So that's kind of fun too. So yeah, I'm not necessarily in court battling it out, but luckily I'm not 100% transactional attorney either.
Cara, you're going to hear it again for the bar. I never want to hear the word perpetuities again. Oh yeah, it'll be back for the bar exam, don't worry. I unfortunately didn't really learn the rule against perpetuities really well when I was a 1L, and I definitely had to learn that stuff again when I was sitting for the bar, and I was like, what is this?
Well, and actually brings up a good point about how much time have I got? Let's talk about grades. Unless you are going to Columbia and have every intention of, working on the 80th floor of whatever skyrise of dude, making 6 figures a year, whatever. It is my opinion that networking matters more than grades. I had a solid 3.0 in law school that I tried not very hard for. I could have maybe tacked a couple of tenths of a point onto my GPA, but instead I was out doing things. My law school was very intentionally a couple of blocks away from the Dallas Bar Association. Instead of buckling down and, reading my case law for the third time or whatever for class, I would walk over to the Bar Association and I would sit and have lunch during CLEs, because we were allowed to do that. I would sit and listen to CLEs for attorneys. Sometimes I would sit there and listen to stuff and I only understood 5% of what was said, but I did learn some things, like, for example, wills. My first year of law school, I went to it was the legal aid of Dallas was giving a CLE on how to do basic wills for non-estate planning attorneys so that they could go volunteer at the clinic and help people write basic wills. Well, sitting there and just eating lunch one day, that was my kind of precursor to taking the whole wills class. It was like, this is what you're going to learn. And that was awesome. I was face to face with other attorneys, talking. I would go to happy hours for local bar sections, like the Dallas Young Lawyers. I would go to that. And I got my first job, that one at the personal injury firm, by hanging out and drinking with one of the lawyers that was already there. Like, oh, you need a job? Yeah, great. Here you go. So I say all that to say, I had good enough grades where I never stayed up all night saying, am I going to pass or not? Like, it at least do that well. But it's my opinion that getting out there and learning, meeting other lawyers, learning what kind of lawyer you do or do not want to be, that's another thing too, because about 10% of lawyers are the ones that give lawyers such a bad name. I have met amazing lawyers. Most of them are wonderful people who love their jobs, are very ethical, want to do the best they can for the sake of justice and the sake of their clients. And then there's those other guys.
I totally agree. And actually, I think there's actually a very small percentage of lawyers that really do care about grades, but they're the ones that you hear about because that's, big law. That's people who are hiring for federal clerkships. That's people, who are hiring for these like very, very competitive positions. But really, I think most people just want somebody who's going to be a hard worker, that's going to be, malleable and moldable and will learn and, will be diligent and will be thorough and do all those things. And I have never, ever, not once in all my years of practice, had a client come in and ask me, what were your grades in law school? Never. They just don't care. They don't ask you, did you go to a top tier law school? Like, they don't,
Yeah, unless you're graduating top 10% from the top 10 law schools, I don't think it matters. I think it's all about how you hustle.
Totally. And I 100% agree about networking. I harp on it all the time. Cara knows. She's one of my mentees that
I'm going to say, no, Angie, I know that's your thing. I know you agree with that.
I'm constantly telling her, you gotta be networking with people. I don't care what your grades are. You gotta be out there talking to people. And you have to be even more intentional about it during these times when you can't just walk across the street to the bar and hang out with the lawyers. Like, you've got to be more intentional about reaching out to people on LinkedIn, about inviting people to do Zoom chats. I know it's awkward, guys. I know it feels weird, but you've got to do it. I mean, like, that's how people get jobs,
Guys, I got a $10 solution for you. I don't have a huge problem being outgoing anyway. So you can go on Amazon and get this. There's something called Chat Pack, and it's this little box of these really creative conversation starters. I think they're meant for dinner and cocktail parties. So I picked out about 30 of those little conversation starters that I thought were best. So, like, for example, Dallas Young Lawyers Association had a wine tasting. It makes it a lot easier when there's a wine tasting. But I had these 30 cards. I would just walk up to one of those cocktail tables of folks standing around and be like, hey, my name's Shelly. I'm a law student at UNT. Do you guys want to play a game? And they're like, a game? Like, yeah. And I would literally hold them out and say, pick a card. And then we would start talking. And, I could kind of gauge whether or not they were into it or not. And sometimes it would be one question and I would walk away. And sometimes I would hang out with them all night.
Yeah.
It's called Chat Pack. And if you don't really know how to, and again, that was my thing. And I was prepared for, are some people going to think I'm a lunatic? Fine. I don't want to hang out with them anyway. But some people loved it. Like, I wasn't like, can you guys tell me what your elevator speech was? Like, I didn't want to just be, perfectly in the box, perfectly, I don't want to say professional because that's not it.
You didn't want to be all shop. Like, I
swear and stuff.
Yeah. So again, I was prepared for some people. I am not going to be their flavor of jam, and that is fine. But some people were so glad to see somebody that was being genuine. And it has worked very well for me. And I'm very well connected this early in my career to lots of people because I was willing to be my genuine self.
Totally. Well, I want to open it up for some questions. So if anybody has any questions that they want to ask Shelly, feel free to jump on camera and ask. Or if you can't turn on your camera, feel free to ask in the chat box and we'll get to those.
I just wanted to jump in real quick because I have class in a second, but I didn't want to just jump off without saying, Shelly, you don't even know. Like, you don't know that I am you and that you're actually me. You don't even know this. So I'm just telling you this. This was like, I am a non-traditional student, and it's just like everything you're saying is like, it's like things that you know, and then, or people have told you, but then you forget because you're going to class and you're studying and all this stuff, and then you hear it again, and it's like so reinvigorating. It's like, yeah, that's right. That does make sense. That's exactly how I feel, and it like gives you that encouragement to like keep going. And so this was just, you said so much that I was glad I was on mute. I was kind of talking and agreeing on mute. I'm like, yeah, girl. So this was great. Like, Angie, thank you. Shelly, thank you. I learned a lot, and I really am interested in trust and estate. So there's that part of it too. That's like, let me hear what Shelly has to say about like that practical information that you gave about the day-to-day and the work-life balance, pay, that type of honesty, that type of, I mean, that was helpful, very helpful. And it was very nice meeting you. And I thank you for this. Both of y'all. Angie, you too.
Thank you. I hope that you can at least get the same as me in that you have a blast in law school and that you can find something that is suited to you. If that means it's pleasantly boring the way that mine kind of is sometimes, then good.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kara. See ya.
Okay, see ya.
Does anybody else have any questions for Shelly?
Yeah, I had one question. Oh, a bunch of questions actually. But yeah, first I want to thank you, Shelly, for sharing your experience because I was actually looking into state law this week and this like the past 2 weeks, and I was like, man, I really want to learn more about it. But thank you so much. I had a question about if you've ever had to deal with international state, like if that client came up to you and they were like, yeah, I have properties here, but also in another country, and how do you deal with that? And yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you the annoying lawyer answer that I give to clients, and that's it depends. So first of all, because it's English law, the general answer that if it's any country that was or is at some point an English Commonwealth, then it's also probably going to be very similar. I actually, again, my 3L year, I got to do an ancillary probate from Australia, because it was basically the same. I've had to work with clients that have property in other places. So first of all, there is, I forgot some international organization that basically there's a treaty that's of certain countries that said, we are going to honor each other's estate planning documents. So that's the first thing. However, for various reasons, including in some countries for religious reasons, you can throw money around left and right to whomever you want, but some countries have really interesting restrictions on real property and whether and who you're allowed to give real estate to. Like in some countries, you're allowed to give real estate to your children, but not to your cousin. So that's kind of interesting too. But the thing about it is kind of like international shipping was when I was at FedEx, on a month-to-month, even a week-to-week basis, how we're allowed to convey property across international lines, how we're allowed to ship things across international lines, depends on who we're fighting with on a week-to-week basis and who they're fighting with and whatever. So it depends. Some countries will honor American estate planning documents and vice versa. Some will only to an extent, and some will tell you to go pound sand.
Interesting.
That's interesting. Thank you. And one more question. If I was wondering if it would be beneficial to get a real estate license if you were interested, just as because I will have a gap year and I was planning to work that year, but I was wondering if you can do anything to learn more about it and if getting a license would kind of help you out.
What state are you in? What state are you planning on practicing?
Oh, I'm in Texas right now, and I'm really interested in the Dallas area. I'm gonna apply to UNT, SMU, and Texas A&M Law School.
Okay. So first of all, and I didn't know this until I started working at the firm, if you are a lawyer in Texas, you can sell property. Like you have a real estate license. So I don't think so. I think the only reason you would want to get it, I think it would be a whole lot of time and money to just put something on your resume. And I guess you would have a leg up on property law because you have to learn a lot of property law in real estate school. But I think you might be have better use of your time doing other things. But once you're an attorney, you are allowed to sell real estate. Like my boss had a house built and he worked as his own real estate agent and got to pay himself 3%. I've worked as a real estate agent, just like clients who sell things to, hey, I'm, selling the house and I want to sell it to my neighbor. We're all done. Can you, get the documents for me? Yeah, fine. I've done that. Again, I think I was a 3L. I did a real estate contract.
You might be better off taking your gap year to go work for an estate planning attorney.
Absolutely. Go get paid to be a law clerk and learn all this instead of paying to get a real estate license. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. In the chat box, Anna says that she just wants to thank you for sharing your experience. And there's many similarities in your journey compared to an English one. Let's see. And she was also told that in this field in England, courtroom work is not daily. So, okay, cool. Does anybody else have any other questions that they want to ask to Shelly? Ask now or forever hold your peace. But in case they do come up with something afterwards, this always happens to me. I come up with questions afterwards and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have asked that. Can they reach out to you on LinkedIn, Shelly?
Absolutely. If you want to hear one of our webinars, for example, that are, for laymen, just to be able to kind of get an overview of estate law, it would not be terribly boring for you, I promise.
Awesome. Okay, well, Shelly, I think you dropped your LinkedIn link in the chat earlier, right?
I'll drop it again.
Okay. So everyone can connect with her. Awesome. And tomorrow we have our virtual happy hour, so if you want to be able to actually interact with people and just take a break out of your day, it's at 4 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, and we split you out into breakout rooms so you actually get to know one another. It's really fun. So come hang out with us tomorrow, and then we'll be back for 2 more meetups next week. So bye, everybody.